We've had a lot of very good speeches this morning. We've spoken a lot about ESG. We have a lot of people doing a lot of good things. But I think we need to understand where we've actually got to as an industry. So I'm going to be controversial as usual. So those of you that know me, back in 2018, 2 years before the sulphur cap came in as a requirement, I stood up at one of the TMS conferences and I said that I disagreed with scrubbers full stop. I said that basically scrubbers were putting the pressure of desulfuring the fuel onto the ship owner, and it was an onshore problem. Now, obviously with the going green of maritime fuel, that can't be put as an onshore problem because it has to be on the ship. So it's a slightly different challenge. But I think we need as an industry to look a bit wider at what we're doing at the moment. We have a lot of pressure and a lot of regulation coming to the industry, and there isn't actually a clear path on how we get there. There's many of the big container lines that ordered the dual fuel methanol ships, and all of a sudden they've stopped doing it because they've realised that there's no supply and they've switched to LNG. LNG, yes, it's a reduction in carbon, but is it really if you do well to wake rather than tank to wake? I'm not sure it is. So, and incidentally, both LNG and LPG are exempt from Fuel EU until 2040 completely. So there are no fines whatsoever, even though the reality is from tank to wake, it's about a 20% reduction in carbon, and from well to wake, it's probably nothing. So we need to understand what's going on in the industry from a decarbonisation perspective and how we're actually going to get there. We have all the regulations telling us that we're going to be here by 2030, here by 2040, and we're going to be carbon free by 2050. Well, my former company, eShips, and Tim, their project with the barge, that's absolutely fantastic, but that's inshore. How are we going to decarbonise ocean-going vessels? Are we going to decarbonise a VLCC? Travelling all around the world from the Middle East to China, Middle East to the States. I don't know how that's going to be done because the fuel supply at the moment is not there. So I would like to understand where the technology is coming from. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. I think we absolutely have to for our grandchildren's benefit. But I just want to understand that there's regulations coming in and we haven't really had the focus on where this is coming from, so we can discuss that in the panel conversation. I just want to put a different opinion out there that everyone is looking at, we have to do this, but no one's actually looking at how. I then move on to markets, and Donald Trump again, he says something and the markets move. As a company, we've actually stopped trading paper temporarily because you could have the fundamentals of a market correct, Donald Trump can say something and then you've got a call on your margin. So he's making markets move, not just in shipping, but all markets are moving because of what he says. We've got a disconnect as well. What I've not been able to understand myself over the past year and a half, charter rates, particularly in dry bulk, have been at fairly, not all-time lows, but they've been at extremely low rates, but the asset prices are still extremely high. There's absolutely no sense in buying a dry bulk ship right now and putting it on long-term charter. You're just going to lose money. And it's very difficult to understand what's happening in that market. The tanker market is something better than dry bulk, but it's still difficult to understand what's going on. We had a presentation this morning which talked about shipbuilding and the fact that the new building prices are high, and yes, the shipyards are full of ships until 2028, potentially now 2029, depending on the ship type you want, and particularly if you want an eco dual fuel ship. But it's very difficult to understand how the second-hand prices are not coming down when the earnings on those ships are not there. We've seen a reduction recently, but I think again in this morning's presentation we are at, we're close to all-time highs. I think actually if you inflation adjust, we are actually back at price, or last year we were at prices that were approaching the 2008 levels. These have come off slightly in the last few months, but we're still not really seeing a downturn. So the market volatility, it's in both chartering prices and asset prices. And there's been a big disconnect in the mainstream markets for the past year and a half, 2 years. This is something that needs to correct, and we can discuss that on the panel as well. This one I like. Banks. These were the traditional source of finance for shipping. It hasn't been for some time now. They are there. If we look at the European banks, they have the regulation that was all discussed this morning. They have their green quota. They want to know how much carbon you're emitting and everything else. There are a plethora of other banks. Everybody in this room talks about their green credentials. Every ship owner that turns up to this conference and many similar ones like this, they're the top end, they're the professional part of the industry, and they're the people that we like to do business with. But you have to understand that there are over 1,000 shipping companies in Dubai, or in the UAE rather, and I think that represented in this room is probably less than 50. So it's that other group of people. Where are they getting their finance from? How are they financing their ships, and are they going green? The answer's probably no to going green, and they're sourcing finance in the Far East. There is a whole plethora of financing opportunities in the Far East where they're only interested in the financial return and not the green return. So if you are ethical, you can go to the European banks, the US banks, and you can finance traditionally. If you are non-ethical, then there are places to go which I don't know where they are. I do, but I'm not telling you. So I think there needs to be discussion again. How do we bring the mainstream players that are in this room together with the non-mainstream players? The good example is the grey fleet. The grey fleet is there. We had 296 ships OFAC sanctioned about 3 weeks ago. Now, what I've seen across my desk in the past 2 weeks since that happened is the price of 15-year-old plus Aframax and Suezmax tankers has gone back up by 20%, and they're the only tankers that are being sold. So basically all that's happened is the ships got sanctioned. Various ports have said that they won't take the sanctioned ships, including in China, and the owners of those ships, I don't know what they've done with them, but they've gone out and bought replacements. So what's happening is all you're doing is moving. Now what concerns me is what's happening to all those sanctioned ships, because technically they can't be scrapped, but we do have a scrapper on the panel, which we can ask that question to on the panel, because will they take a sanctioned ship to get it off the water? But that's one for the panel when we get there. And I think my time is up, so I will hand over to the next person.